Hi. The activity we're doing today has to do with genetics, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about genetics and the study of genetics, and then I'll walk you through some aspects of this exercise. I think this is kind of a fun exercise. It doesn't require much from you other than a coin and maybe some paper and hopefully some crayons or colored pencils or something that you can work with. So let's start with Gregor Mendel. Gregor Mendel was an Austrian monk who figured out a lot about genetics by working with pea plants. And pea plants are great because they have several characteristics that are easy to track, and they have real ease of separating the pollen, so it's easy to control what their genetic makeup is going to be when you put them together. Now, every characteristic that you have at least two genes for. You've got one that came from your mom, one that came from your dad, just as they had two genes. So, they got one from their mother and one from their father. End result is that there's about a 50-50 chance that you will get one gene or another, depending just basically on luck. There is a couple of things that Mendel discovered, and that was the law of segregation and the law of independent assortment. And with those, basically, no one trait goes with another trait. A person's not going to have blue eyes just because they have blonde hair and things like that. So every combination of genes is possible. And just like we were doing before with the epidemic, basically each parent gives two choices, one of two choices, so it's 2 times 2. There's 4 choices. And if we go with more and more genetics, we've got 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, and so forth and so on. End result is that we are all very unique in terms of our genetic makeup. We have thousands and thousands of genes that code for a variety of products. Now, we're going to play with some fairly simple ones. We're going to play with some facial characteristics that generally have just 1 to maybe 3 genes that are involved. And we're going to flip a coin to determine which gene you happen to get, or which gene you happen to give to your child. We'll look at traits like cleft chin or non-cleft. This is what that same trait might look like if it were in a woman. We'll look at characteristics like whether a person has a round face or if they have a square face like this one. We'll also play with characteristics like attached earlobes versus detached earlobes. Whether a person has a widow's peak or not. Widow's peak is this little pointy area that's at the top of the skull. This would be an extreme case of widow's peak. I don't think that you'll need to draw anything that looks like that. Another characteristic that we look at is whether a person has a unibrow or not. And just for the men, we'll look at whether you end up with ear hair or not. This is one characteristic associated with the Y chromosome. One characteristic associated protein that shuts down some of the activities of the X chromosome. So essentially, men are just lesser versions of women. And the other characteristic that is coded for on the Y chromosome is ear hair. Now, to get an understanding of genetics, we can look at something called a Punnett square. As I said, we've got 2 genes for every characteristic that we have, and we get half from mom and half from dad. So let's say this is mom on the left. She has 2 genes that are little r. We record the recessive genes as the small letter, and say this is the dad, and he has a dominant trait, which is noted by the capital R. He also has a recessive trait, noted by the little r. And you can see, just looking at this, that we have basically 2 possible combinations of genes in the end. We have capital R, and little r as a result of what our parents have. In this situation, what we've got is a genotype, which is the combination of the two genes, and we also have something that is how the organism looks, which is phenotype. Now, depending on what we've got going on, we may have genes that are dominant, and we've got them in as the R in the previous video or previous image, or recessive. We have them as the lowercase r. We also have some characteristics that are codominant. And we looked at that when we were doing blood typing. You remember we had type A and type B, and if the child got gene A from one parent and gene B from the other parent, they had actually codominance and they had type AB. Now, the recessive gene in that situation, if we were looking at O, and in a situation where they had the A gene and the O gene, they would still be type A blood because A is dominant, but they would have the recessive gene for O. And so we've got a variety of combinations that can come out as a result. And even though someone who had both genes for A would be type A blood, if they have a gene for A and a gene for O, they still have type A blood. And that's what we're talking about when we say phenotype. Phenotype is how something looks or behaves. So let's take a look at the genetics of sex. So we've got mom, and mom has an X chromosome, and she has another X chromosome. Dad has an X chromosome that he got from his mother. He has a Y chromosome that he got from his father. Now, mom always is going to give her child an X chromosome. So we have X here, X here, X here, and X here. But dad can give either an X or a Y. And if he gives an X, then we have two X's, and we have a child that is a female. And if he gives a Y, then we have an X and a Y, and we have a boy. End result there is that there's a 50-50 chance. It's the dad that ends up selecting what kind of sex the child's going to have. So something else that has a 50-50 chance, it's when you toss a coin. So if I toss, whoop, and you may not be able to see it, there it is, that coin fell with a tail. And in this exercise, we're going to say that tails is for a female and heads is for a boy. So the father has thrown that one coin, and you will do the same thing. You will have the father do one flip, whereby you will determine the sex of a child. Everything else you're going to do two flips for, one that comes from mom and one that comes from dad, that gives you a 50-50 chance. I realized that as I was editing the other video that tells you how to do the exercise, that I say one flip at various times. What I'm talking about is one flip per parent, or a pair of flips. So for anything that has one gene associated with the characteristics other than sex, you're going to flip once for mom and flip once for dad. So this is the first of the two videos that you will be watching for the particular activity. The second one gives you some instructions on how to do this activity. So you'll want to go and follow through those. Hopefully I walk you through it fairly easily. I show you, flips and different choices that you can make. And you will be using a worksheet that's also within this folder. Once you have completed that worksheet by indicating or circling which characteristics your child happens to have, you will draw the child, and you can either draw it on paper and scan that image or photograph that image and send it to me, or you can use a program that I show you about that you can draw with that. It's There are several free ones on the website. I wasn't able to find the one that I really like. I think it's been taken offline. But still, you're going to draw the child. You are going to name the child. You have to give it a name and indicate your name as well. Now, you can do this by yourself. You just have to do 2 flips, one for mom and one for dad. Or you can work with a partner if you've got someone in your household that you want to have play the role of the mom or the dad and you want to take the other one. You can both flip the coins at the same time and also, get the characteristics of your child. Anyway, I hope I've explained everything adequately for you. I will be online Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 1 o'clock to 2:30. So if anybody has any questions, you can log on, and I'll be happy to answer them. This will be due by Monday of next week.